Part 3, Chapter 1. Lizzie broke off from her story and turned to look at us. "I'm so cross with myself. I meant to bring my photograph album with me," she said, "but I left it at home in my little apartment when they brought me here. I miss it so much. I used to look at it almost every day, you know. The things I could have shown you. There's a photo of all of us down on the farm when I was a small girl, and Carly was even smaller, just a baby in Pappy's arms, in happier times. I love that photo. We were all outside that same hay barn, and I am sitting up on Tommy with Muddy holding him, and I have long plaits and a big gappy smile. My 2 front teeth are missing. Uncle Manfred must have taken the picture because he's not in it, and Aunt Lottie is looking very serious as usual. When I look at this photo, I can see it all so clearly. I can almost breathe in the air of the countryside. And I have a photo also of Marlene. Only one, but mostly it's of her trunk because she was trying to eat the camera. It's enough, though. Sometimes I worry that everything that happened might be some kind of dream, or that maybe I made the whole thing up. But I only have to look at those photographs to know I did not, that it really did happen. I wish I had brought them with me. I wish I could show you. "We could always go and fetch them if you like," I said. "If you trust us with your key, that is." "Of course I do, dear," she replied. "After all, I'm trusting you with my story, aren't I? I have never told anyone else, you know. That would be kind, very kind. I have the key to my apartment here, in my drawer, Carly. You might have to wiggle the key in the lock a bit, but you will manage. You can find it easily enough. Just around the corner from Main Street on George Avenue, the first house. You go up the steps, number 2. She was reaching towards her bedside cupboard as she spoke, but hadn't the strength to pull open the drawer. So Carly did it for her, searching all around till he found them. There was an elephant on the keychain. "To remind me," she said, smiling. Then she noticed something else in her drawer, and her eyes brightened suddenly. Now this I could never leave behind, Carly. I never go anywhere without it. Can you pass it to me? This is what I wanted to show you." I had no notion at first as to what it might be, and from the look of puzzlement on his face as he handed it over to her, neither did Carl. It was a small round object, made of metal, black in color. "It's very heavy, and cold, too," Carl said. "What is it?" By now I was beginning to think I recognized it for what it was. "A compass," I said. "Is that what it is?" Lizzie was cradling it lovingly in her cupped hands, and for several moments seemed too overcome to speak. "You are quite right, dear," she replied at last. "This is a compass to help you find your way, but this is not just any old compass. It is the best compass in the whole wide world, I promise you, because it has shown me the way all through my life." She opened the lid and touched the face of it with her fingertips. "I first saw this compass on that day," she went on. "The day we found him lying there in the barn." Let's stop for a minute. What questions could we ask at this point in the story? Go ahead and jot some of those down. And now the story is going to go back to the past, back to that day where they found the soldier in the barn. I think sometimes that perhaps I had 2 beginnings in my life. The moment of my birth, of course, and the moment I set eyes on this man, this airman who I knew had bombed my city, a bomber, a killer who had caused so much suffering to so many. As Muddy had said, here was the enemy, close to, in the flesh. He was not the first I had seen. Several times I had watched columns of prisoners of war being marched along the streets of Dresden. To be honest, I had never taken that much notice. They looked much like our soldiers, only dirtier, sadder. Some people would scream obscenities at them and spit at them and throw things, so I would look away. It made me feel ashamed. I never thought people could be that angry, that vindictive. I could not imagine what would make them do such things. But for just a moment, looking down at him lying there in the hay in Uncle Manfred's barn that morning, I understood it completely, and I hated him, and I hoped he was dead. Then he opened his eyes and looked at me, and I knew right away that he was no more of a killer than Pappy was. I often wondered afterwards what it must have been like to wake up and see the 4 of us staring down at him. Muddy with a pitchfork pointing at his chest, and Marlene towering over us, her trunk reaching down towards him. His eyes were wide with alarm as he sat up in the hay and raised his hands in the air. "English," Muddy said. Her voice was shaking from anger, I thought, more than fear. "No, 9, he replied. "Canadian, Canada. "Bomber?" Muddy was holding the pitchfork at his throat. "RAF?" The man nodded. "England, America, Canada, it doesn't matter where you come from. Do you know what you have done? Have you any idea? Muddy was shouting at him now and crying too in her fury. Did you see the fire you made? Are you proud of that? Do you know how many you killed? Do you care? Do you have any idea how beautiful a city Dresden was before you came? Do you? I should kill you right now. Muddy raised the pitchfork. I really thought she was going to do it. I grabbed her arm and held it fast. You cannot do it, Muddy, I cried. You must not. How often have I heard you say it? To Pappy, to me, to Uncle Manfred, and Aunt Lottie, all killing is wrong, no matter what. It is what you always told us, remember? It was many long moments before Muddy lowered the pitchfork. Then she stepped back and handed it to me. Maybe I cannot do it, she said, but I wanted to. That is what your bombs do. They make hate. I think at this moment I hate you more than I have ever hated anyone in my whole life. I do not blame you. To our astonishment, the airman was speaking to Muddy in almost perfect German. I saw the fire from the plane. I could not believe it. I did not expect it to be like that the whole city would burn like that. None of us did. Oh, really, said Muddy. So tell me, what did you think it would be like then? Some kind of carnival? A fireworks display, perhaps? We thought it would be like the Blitz on London, I suppose. Then the Luftwaffe came. The airman replied softly, not responding at all to Muddy's fury. I was there, and that was terrible enough. But last night, it looked like the fires of hell. That's what we're doing in this war, all of us. On your side, on our side, we're making a hell on earth, and we do not seem to be able to know how to stop. I am sorry. I know that it's not enough, but it is all I can say. No one spoke for some time until Carly piped up, breaking the silence between us. Do you really fly a Spitfire, he asked. No, only a Lancaster, I'm afraid. And I didn't fly it anyway. I'm not a pilot, I'm a navigator. And then he smiled. And when he smiled then, I remember thinking that he looked like a boy. He looked more like a boy than a man. And you navigated your way to Dresden so you could drop your bombs on thousands of innocent people, said Muddy. Well, bravo you. How do you people like you sleep at night? That's what I want to know. Muddy was looking about her, suddenly nervous. And the others? Where are the others of your crew? Are you alone? All dead, the airman replied. We were hit by flak over the city. Everyone in the plane was killed except for Jimbo. He was the pilot and me. Jimbo told me to get out right away, to jump. He said that he would hold the plane as steady as he could and then follow me, but he never did. I saw the plane blow up as I was parachuting down. He saved my life. And that's funny, you know, because Jimbo and me, we never got along. Not really. Bit of a joker he was. Thought it was all just one big game. The war, I mean. Him and me, we'd have big arguments. He turned out to be a pretty good buddy after all, didn't he? They were all good buddies, and they're all gone now. Don't you dare expect me to feel sorry for them, Muddy said, not so threatening towards him as she had been, but still angry at him. Not after what they did, what you did. And how come you speak German anyway? I have a Swiss mother, the airman told her, and a Canadian father. So I grew up speaking German and English. Carly was not concerned at all with any of this. He was full of his own questions. Muddy kept trying to stop him from speaking to the airman, but Carly ignored her. He wanted to know the man's name. Peter, the airman said, Peter Kahn. Carly wanted to know how old he was. 21, came the reply. Then Carly took it upon himself to introduce everyone. I am Carly, I am 9 years old. This elephant is named Marlene, and she is from the zoo in Dresden, and she is 4 years old. And I am the only one who is allowed to ride on her. And this is Elizabeth. She's 16 and is always telling me what to do. And Muddy is, well, she's Muddy. And I'm hungry. Are you hungry, Peter? Muddy took him by the arm and pulled him away then. But Carly could not stop looking at the young man, and the truth was, neither could I. I think I must have done nothing but stare at him the whole time. Now that he had a name, I found I was not looking so much at the uniform anymore. He was much taller than I expected when he got to his feet. Let's stop here. What questions could you ask about the text so far? Go ahead and jot some of those down. Pitchfork in hand, Muddy ushered him out through the barn door. We left Marlene shut in there, helping herself busily to the hay and rumbling with pleasure. It was not difficult to break a window and let ourselves into the farmhouse. Muddy said she felt bad about having to do it, but that needs must. We could hardly stand out in the snow and wait, could we? She would explain it all later to Uncle Manfred and Aunt Lottie when they came home, she said. They would understand. I was not so sure they would. The stove was out, but it was still warm, so we thought they could not have been gone that long. Things were a mess, too, as if they had left the place in a hurry. The more we looked around, the more we were sure that, like so many others, they had left to join the great exodus westwards, taking with them what they could. Luckily for us, Uncle Manfred and Aunt Lottie must have left in too much of a rush to take all their food with them. There were some rounds of cheese. Uncle Manfred always made his own, and we found some fruit in jars and pickles too, and some honey. But best of all, down in the cellar, Muddy discovered a whole ham. I got the fire going in the stove. Carly fetched in the wood from the shed, and all the while the airman sat at a kitchen table, forbidden to move by Muddy, who kept a fearsome eye on him, and she took the pitchfork with her, I noticed, whenever she went around the house. When he offered to help me with the fire, she snapped at him and told him to sit where he was and be quiet. Carly and I were under strict instructions from her not to talk to him at all, even when we were sitting down with him to eat at the kitchen table. But that did not stop us from sneaking a look at him from time to time as he was eating. He was obviously as ravenous as we were, so we all ate in silence, not a word being spoken between us, until, that is, Muddy left the kitchen, telling us that she was going to check on Marlene out in the barn. Before she went out, she handed me the pitchfork and told me to use it if I had to. I hate silences between people. I think I always have. I was longing to say something to Peter while Muddy was out of the room, but I was too shy. And anyway, I could not think of a thing to say. Carly was never shy, though, never backwards and coming forward. Before I knew it, he had gotten down from the table and was juggling with 2 large pine cones he'd found on the windowsill. "Can you do this?" he cried. "My little brother likes to do tricks," I explained to Peter. "He likes to play the fool. He's a bit of an actor, I suppose." "I can see that," Peter said. "He reminds me of me when I was little. It's what I used to do back in Canada. Acting, I mean. It's all I ever wanted to do. Go on the stage like my mother before me and my father. I'd just gotten started in Toronto, and then all this happened. Anyway, it'll be over soon enough now, and when it is, I'm going right back there. I can't wait. I liked to listen to him talk. He was so full of spirit, so determined. The truth was that I was enjoying his company, even though, of course, I knew that I should not be. The thing was, you see, that I could tell he liked being with me, talking to me, looking at me. I think maybe that's why I felt at once so much at ease with him. When you're young and you find for the first time that someone likes you like this, it is powerful, very powerful. But Carly soon had Peter's attention again, with his wretched juggling. 4 pine cones now. He was getting ambitious. A few minutes later, when Muddy came back in again, she found Peter and Carly sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of the stove, deep in conversation. Peter had something in his hand and was showing it to Carly, who was fascinated by it. I couldn't quite make out what they were saying or what it was, but I was busy at the sink by now and not paying much attention. Muddy shouted at Carly to get up and come to her at once. "Look, Muddy," he said, ignoring her completely. "Peter has a compass. He says it's like magic. He's been telling me all about it. Do you know, he's only got to point it in the right direction, and it will take him all the way home." "He's not going home, Carly," Muddy said, taking Carly by the arm and pulling him to his feet. "And I told you not to talk to him, didn't I?" "It was my fault," the airman said, holding up his hands. "Look, I am sorry." "You're always sorry," Muddy went on bitterly. "You're very good at being sorry. Well, you can be sorry in a prison camp. As soon as I can, I shall turn you over to the police. They are bound to be searching for you. They must have seen the parachute come down. Sooner or later they will come looking, and I shall turn you in. Meanwhile, you will not ingratiate yourself with my children. You will not speak to them, and they will not speak to you. Do you hear me? And if you try to run away, you will either freeze to death out there, or the police will catch you. Either way, you're not going home." She held out her hand for the compass. "And I will have that compass, please. Without it, you're not going home. You're not going anywhere." Peter took some time getting to his feet. He did not say a word. Towering over Muddy, he looked down at her, closed the compass, and handed it to her. Let's stop and ask, this is the end of the chapter, what questions can we ask now? Go ahead and jot down some questions on your paper.